Don't worry, be happy when you're exhausted during Adar. Mishenechnas Adar marbim besimcha. When Adar enters, we increase joy. This is what the Gemara says in Tainus. It's the Jewish version of "Don't worry, be happy." Bobby McFerrin, or as people know it from Bob Marley. It's Rosh Chodesh, the new month of Adar, and it's hard to take this charge seriously. Several problems emerge, some that are specific to this year amidst a global pandemic, and some that are general. First, are we really in that much control of our own mood? Second, doesn't this sort of posture risk blaming folks who are sad or worse, suffering from depression from their own problems? Third, by encouraging people to be happy, do we not risk perpetuating a culture of well-intentioned yet counterproductive advice to those who suffer, often for good cause, without addressing the root causes of their sadness? Isn't this superficial? Doesn't it overlook injustice? These are just some of the many oppositional thoughts that arise in my mind each year. Increasingly, it's harder to just be happy or increase joy. That's especially true this year amidst the upheaval, the suffering, and fatigue. Sure, there are plenty of moments of blessing and true silver linings. Nature is the one that first comes up for me personally. Spending so much more time outside, especially in the woods, because that's the only safe outing, is more restorative than any Broadway or Trinity Rep play. But on the whole, what does it mean to intentionally cultivate joy in a world with so much despair? How would we do it, even if we decided it was right? After all, the Talmud gives no instruction manual, just an exhortation. The Funnel of Exhaustion. Dr. Marie Asperg, a Swedish psychiatrist who conducted initial groundbreaking research on burnout, created the exhaustion funnel seen above. A person cycles around the funnel in a loop, descending yet further down the vortex of despair. For example, it might start with problems sleeping related to anxiety, themselves caused perhaps by what Krista Tippett has termed the dis-ease of busyness. And then sleeplessness leads to a lack of energy, which leads to more sleep disruption, a compounding of the original problems themselves, and yet less energy to deal with them, and so on. Enter physical ailments in the body, guilt about both a lack of productivity and a lack of being able to pick oneself up by the bootstraps, and it cycles around, leading to joylessness and depression and a crash. Based on my pastoral work in our community, I'm willing to wager the vast majority of us are regularly spinning around this vortex without much control, riding life like an amusement park ride we regret getting on. We're not having fun. We're nauseous. How can we reverse the inevitable and rise back up? Is there a better path than revolving down the funnel, crashing for a bit, resting just enough to function again, and repeating the cycle? Afilu b'mile deshtuta, even with stupid things. Ask people what Rabbi Nachman's most famous teachings are, and you're likely to get one of two answers. It'll either be the teaching about the whole world being a very narrow bridge, or the one about it being a great mitzvah to be constantly happy. Mitzvah gedola lios besimcha tamid. It's a great mitzvah to be happy always, Rabbi Nachman said. The general rule is that one has to strengthen oneself with all of their energy to be only happy. For the nature of human beings is to be drawn after sadness and depression resulting from the assaults and occurrences of daily life. Every person is full of afflictions. Therefore, a person must force themselves with great energy to be happy always and happify themselves in any way they can, even with stupid things. Even though it's also true that a broken heart is a very good thing, that's only true for a fixed period of time. And it's appropriate to set aside a particular time during the day to break your heart open and pour out your soul before the blessed Creator, as is our practice. But the rest of the day, you have to be happy. It's very easy to descend from sadness to bona fide depression, which is a much greater risk than sinning out of excessive joy, God forbid. I want to highlight several surprising features of this seminal teaching from Rabbi Nachman. The reason you always have to be happy, ironically, is that sadness is the presumptive baseline. We're already all sad because life is tough. At least that's the assumption. Obviously, then, we're not always happy. In fact, the opposite is nearly true. Moreover, sadness is not bad. Actually, as Rabbi Nachman notes, echoed by the Kutzker in almost the same language, A broken heart is a very good thing. In shalem milev shavor, there's nothing so whole as a broken heart. It identifies us with the pain of Shekhinah, with God's exile, with the gap between the world as it ought to be and the world as it is. A broken heart is the place where we meet injustice seriously, finally escape denial of our problems, acknowledge the truth of our mortality, and so much more. But it is dangerous. It's fraught. It can crush us. So what are the prescriptions? For Rabbi Nachman, two things. Divine talk therapy. This is a way to account for that brokenheartedness that's good. Hisbodedus, speak in the vernacular to God at a fixed time and let it all out. That's lofty and incredible. Anyone can do it if they get over the shame of talking to God silently that's imposed by our secularized society. Second, anything that works for you. That's what he said. Afilu mile deshtuta. Cookies, TV, warm drink, a bath, or shower, a walk, whatever. This isn't quite the avodah begashmias of the Baal Shem Tov, serving God through embracing physicality. It's something else, acknowledging that at the bottom of the funnel, simple physical pleasures are achievable, enjoyable, and effective. They lift us up just enough to get us going in the right direction again. Nourishing activities. Framed in psychological terms, we might note the balance between draining and nourishing activities in our lives. As researchers Mark Williams and Danny Penman note, the funnel is created as you narrow the circle of your life to focus on solving your immediate problems. As you spiral down the funnel, you progressively give up more and more of the enjoyable things in life, which you come to see as optional, to make way for the more important things, such as work. As you slide ever further down, you give up even more of the things that nourish you, leaving yourself increasingly exhausted, indecisive, and unhappy. You are eventually spat out at the bottom, a shadow of your former self. It's all too easy to get sucked into the exhaustion funnel. If you are overworked or otherwise have too much on your plate, it's entirely natural to make space by temporarily streamlining your life. This generally means giving up a hobby or part of your social life so you can focus on your work. Of course, telling people who are already stressed and overburdened that it's paradoxically never more important to make time for nourishing recreational activities is a version of gaslighting. It's unfair and might obscure systemic problems. For example, the recession resultant from the pandemic has affected women statistically. The majority of economic losses have been borne by women, relating, of course, to a broken and expensive system of early childcare in the US. And still, without nourishing activities, Rabbi Nachman's stupid things, joy will remain elusive regardless of who's to blame. Perhaps framed in this way, folks might be encouraged without guilt or blame to find short, simple pleasures like eating really good chocolate to get the party started or at least prevent despair. There is one other possibility that may be pragmatic. Sometimes the things we already do can be reframed. Bringing kind attention to certain draining activities, like answering emails, my favorite draining activity, might enhance the experience. Perhaps the feel of the keys and the autonomy of crafting language is, at base, a source of agency and enjoyment, even as the inbox is still too full. Perhaps a full inbox might be reframed as active connection with friends and loved ones and a sign of belonging. So Rabbi Nachman says, whatever works for you. What would it look like to make Adar, being happy, a tangible daily practice?